What's up? Do you ever wonder like what people in the past would think of the world today if they could, get transported to this time? Well, today you're in luck because we're going to talk about what would Nietzsche think about the world today. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Danny here with my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Yeah, so this is a cool topic, I think. Anyway, what were you gonna
I
say?
was quite curious about this because sometimes I wonder, you look at the world, you see everything that's going on, and you wonder to these people who were definitely the influencers of their time, would they be rolling over in their grave or would they actually be happy with how things turned out?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of philosophers, like and commentators that read Nietzsche, will call him like prophetic because he talks about things that become, that are very relevant now. And he kind of saw trends really early on, actually, with the way things were going, with what we were doing. So he understood like human psychology in a very deep way, I think. Um, and I think, I think honestly, he'd probably be like, I told you so, and also very unhappy. The short answer.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Like,
I really respect the guy because he did a lot of his writings while he was in like immense pain, right?
oh God, yeah, dude, his life was like he was alone and in horrible pain pretty much all the time. He had untreated
Yeah.
syphilis. He had migraines all the time, dizziness, inability to see, all this stuff, and he basically just had this mission, I mean, it's interesting that he even did the work if you think about it, because that was the one thing I guess that he focused on and kept doing, but and he self-published a lot of his stuff too. He wasn't really popular in his time, which is also, that's also
Mm.
hard because if nobody's really like reading you like a
Yeah.
ton, to keep going is
What's the
difficult.
drive?
Yeah.
Everybody does stuff for the short-term gains nowadays. So if you're not getting the rewards for it, what's the drive?
I think about that a lot too, though, because a lot of these great thinkers that we celebrate now, like they weren't necessarily all super, yeah, they weren't necessarily all super popular before their times, right? And so it
For
takes
those of you
act,
listening, you just
yeah,
saw me and Danny pointing at each other because we're as of yet not that popular.
yeah.
But yeah.
But the point is, right? Like, they don't get really famous until after they die, but then they keep doing this thing. Like there's like this compulsion or this like need. They see a reason to do it, right? Which is, I think, really interesting because it's very counterintuitive to how we usually act today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So another thing that I was thinking of was so I was in this book club and it just ended because people are going different ways in life and probably for the better. But like some of in one of the last meetings, it was brought up like, should we even read these authors anymore because they weren't great people in their lives, even though they wrote great books. Like somebody talked about Hemingway and they're like,
Okay.
he's an amazing author, but he was a terrible person back then. And it's like, yeah, we're complex human beings. Like all types of stuff goes on in our lives. Just because somebody doesn't, because you don't approve of someone's life, doesn't mean that they're not a great author.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And it's hard. It's always hard to like, because you're talking about people in a completely different time period than us.
Hmm.
And it's easy to be like, well, they were horrible, but it's like, well, were they though, relative to everybody else around them? Were they actually horrible,
Hmm.
or was that more like kind of the times that they lived in? And that's not to excuse it, but I know you struggle with this in philosophy a lot because a lot of, ancient philosophers, some of them had slaves, some of them were not great people, some of them were Nazi supporters. And the thing you have to look at is there any value in the ideas besides, because you don't, the person that, yes, like, it's important, I think, to be aware of it, but not to let that dictate how you read it.
Yeah, because it is due to the times and also due to like the connectivity. Like I was thinking about this just the other day, how like the stuff that happened in the Holocaust was crazy. How they just did crazy experiments on people. They did
Oh,
surgery
yeah,
without
it was insane.
anesthesia and all this stuff just to like for shits and giggles. And we look back at that like that's the greatest atrocity of all, whatever. And it's terrible. I'm not, making light of it. But it's like that's just the best documented atrocity because like before
Yeah.
then Genghis Khan and all this crazy stuff was going on where they just like destroyed civilizations and but it was not undocumented, nobody knew about it past
Well,
maybe the people who saw it at that
the
time.
only people writing the things down were the ones that weren't destroyed after the fact. So you get a
Yeah,
little bit of a twisted take on history too, you know? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it is. But well, that's
So
the thing. We
anyways,
really know what we know. Yeah.
yeah, so Nietzsche. Okay, so explain what you were saying, where he'd say, "I told you so," and then he'd kind of just be miserable or whatever,
Well,
or he'd
I'll
be,
give you, there's lots of examples we could point to, I guess, but I'll give you one. Like,
yeah.
so he did this lecture series. This was when he was still actually a professor. So this is early on in his career. It was called Anti-Education. And he was basically critiquing the changes that were happening in German education at the time. So he went through German education at a time when it was still elitist. All right. So, they weren't accepting everyone. It was really, basically the students that went got a well-rounded education, all that stuff, right? But changes were happening in German university where basically they were
This was
democratizing.
before it was a requirement to work at McDonald's,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well before. So they were democratizing German education after he had gone through it. He didn't like what he was seeing basically with that trend. And his argument was essentially that, you're yes, you're opening school up to more people, but the emphasis was becoming on specialization, which we do now. And one of his arguments was, well, if you have specialization, you have people that are very smart in one area, but they don't know how to think for themselves. So then they have to rely on the journalist to think for them about politics. They have to rely on the doctor to think for them about medicine. They can't make their own decisions. And he saw that as a really huge threat to society, ideas, and everything. And I would argue that that's gotten exponentially worse today. If you look at like the talking heads, if you look at like all this issues about truth and about, fake news and stuff like that, like that's all screams, what he was talking about, that people, they might be very smart in one area because they specialize, but they don't know how to think for themselves broadly. So they're not really like good citizens, if that makes sense to
Hmm.
say. Yeah, so that's
I would
one good
agree.
example where I think he was very clearly aware of what was happening in the trends.
I would agree. Yeah, especially when it comes to politics. I mean, that's like a very easy barometer for someone's intelligence. Is just like if they're openly talking about. See, I remember back when I was a child, it was like you don't talk about sex, religion, and politics. Like that was a hard and fast rule. And then nowadays it's like
All you talk
it's
about is politics.
yeah. Yeah. That's it. And but it's like it's crazy because no matter what you say, at best you're going to offend just a little bit less than half the people there.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing, right? He even, I forget exactly where, but he says, and one of his things he talks about how politics makes people stupid. And
Hmm.
what he was basically saying is like, and you can see it very clearly today, right? And it's not just politics, but anything where you have to pick a side or where you're asked to pick a side, it's going to make you narrow-minded. Because as soon as you feel like you're on one team and you feel like the other team's against you, you're in a competition now. So now it's not about the ideas. Now it's not about coming up with the best solution. It's about winning, right? And so
Right.
now you've
Yeah.
totally changed the game. You made people narrow-minded. They can't see outside of this. Like, well, we're winning. It's like, yeah, but is this the best thing we should be doing? Is this right? Is this a
Dude,
because usually the
it's
right's
not and
compromise.
it's like either or, but it's not even ends of the same spectrum. It's like
Nope.
you're either for police brutality or you're racist. Choose your side. And it's like, yeah, no. So anyways,
Well, I think no, I think
uh
you're right though. Like that's the other thing, right? You fail to see the complexities that makes us human beings. Right? We're whole
mhm.
people. We're not one thing or another. And I mean, the existentialists, Nietzsche was a forerunner to them too, as a father of, they were big on, understanding ourselves as whole people, realizing ourselves fully. And we're complicated. There's going to be things about us that are good and bad. And finding a way to, create ourselves that's going to be positive is going to take a lot of work. And you need to be able to do that. But I think in a society like ours too, where there's so much external pressure from, I mean, just from advertising, social media, all this stuff, it makes it harder and harder for people to be authentic. And I think that would be another thing he would really see as problematic is that we've gotten actually to the point, I think, where we're less free to think for ourselves than we've maybe ever been.
You remember that game Lemmings? I think it was back on the original PlayStation or something like that, where they just like start walking all in line and then you have to put stuff to like make them move and fall down a
Yeah.
hole or whatever. Dude, I've started calling people lemmings because that's essentially what they've become is they're just repeating the same thing they told and then they're just on their phone all the time and they're like blocking stuff and just doing like dumb stuff and it's like they're just acting completely like lemmings like just I don't know sucked I don't even know what's so important but yeah
Well,
sucked
it's those
in.
dopamine hits, right? It's those very short,
Yeah.
like little like wins. And I think that's the other thing. Everything's become emotional.
I don't want
Like,
to blame Jordan Peterson,
yeah.
but
But it's his fault. Yeah,
yeah.
it's like it is though. I think that's the other hard part is all we there's so much like psychology in these apps and everything to get you to keep using them. And it's
Hmm.
all so much about emotions and anger and getting you worked up so that you feel like,
Yeah.
like what you said, like when people block people, like they don't think the way I do, block them. They feel self-righteous, empowered right then for something arguably really stupid that doesn't matter.
That nobody
But
cares about.
yeah,
Yeah.
nobody cares about them. But it's like, I think this is the other thing, right? Like, we care more now, and this is something I think Nietzsche would find appalling, right? About virtue signaling than we do about actual virtue or about actually being
Hmm.
good people. We care more now about the appearance of being good than actually being good.
Oh my God, dude. I almost lost it the other day at the gym because I was working out and there was this dude who came in there and they have like some mirrors in the gym and he comes in with his water bottle and he's just taking like 10 minutes just taking pictures with in his brand new gym gear, taking pictures with his water bottle, expensive metal whatever water
Yeah,
bottle.
yeah.
And then he goes and sits down on a bench and just sips his water, doesn't work out at all. And then, from all appearances, half an hour later, he just left. Like he just came to the gym, took pictures, sat around, and then left. And I was just like, this.
He
And
wanted to
that's
prove
what,
to
yeah,
everybody that he was going to
it
the gym,
grinds my
though.
gears. I know, right?
He got dressed
And
up.
yeah, and he stayed at the gym for so he can tell people, dude, I was at the gym for half an hour, like rocking out. Yeah.
Yeah, sipping
But
my
man,
water, getting
that
hydrated.
stuff. Yeah, I think I just have too many buttons. Because I
Well,
remember
that
back in the day before cell phones, I used to get pissed off at the dudes at the gym who would come with like a towel and really short shorts and they just stand there with their leg up on the bench just for like 30 minutes chatting with somebody, not using the machine. So yeah.
Well, that no, it is frustrating because it's like, it's shared equipment, right? And like you're
Hmm.
not, but I think this is it, right? I think we see more and more people now in their own bubble, unaware. Dude, I see it driving all the time, like totally unaware of what's going on around them. And I don't even want to blame the people because I don't even know if it's like don't get me wrong, it is them, but it's like
Yeah.
it's also everything else that's causing them to think that this is appropriate. But I think that's it, right? We've lost, we've kind of, I don't know. I think we don't really think for ourselves. We don't question things like we should. It's really sad. I think we're less likely to, kind of be able to challenge ideas anymore because it's just arguments. There's no conversation about stuff. I think you would be
Hmm.
very appalled at where we're at. Yeah.
So talking about not thinking for ourselves, I asked AI what Nietzsche would think of
Hey,
the
there you go.
modern age. Yeah. And it came up with some good and some bad. So you want to hear the good or the bad first?
Let's go with good. We'll be a little positive first.
Okay, we'll start with the good. So, first thing, creative explosion. Nietzsche celebrated self-overcoming and the creation of one's own values. He would probably be amazed by how much freedom individuals have today to reinvent themselves, express new ideas, live outside traditional norms, and challenge authority, all things he championed.
I think that's a little too optimistic.
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, to a point, yeah, I think there is some of that there where like I think, if you take like the US now, like you have freedom to do a lot of different creative things. So I think that's a positive for him.
Hmm.
But the way it plays out, I don't know if it's necessarily because I don't know if he'd say we'd be doing it for the right reasons, I guess. Maybe you could think of it that way.
Ah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
But anyway,
Okay, so the second good. Collapse of old authorities. Nietzsche predicted the death of God, meaning the collapse of traditional religious and moral structures. He would see today's decline in organized religion as confirmation of his prophecy.
well, sort of, except that that's gotten stronger.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like that pendulum. But yeah, I know. I think that is something that he saw coming. One of the things he wanted though was
that's
that
one of the I told you so's that he would say.
yeah, yeah, is that
Yeah.
that we were losing that religion wasn't working for us anymore. We need new ideas, basically. Yeah,
Wouldn't that be funny if people started calling him a prophet instead of a philosopher?
it would be funny. I mean, in some ways, people have said that. He is in some ways.
Okay, so here's the bad. Nihilism. After the death of God, Nietzsche feared a vacuum of meaning where people might turn passive, cynical, or desperate for cheap substitutes.
Yeah.
Consumerism, political fanaticism, shallow entertainment. He would likely see much of modern life, endless scrolling, manufactured outrage, obsession with comfort as the nihilism he warned about.
That's a good one. See, that's very on point. Yeah. And I think this is
Okay.
this though, because that's what he was worried about, right? That if you have this vacuum, you need new meaning. You have to create it. That's hard. And so what do we do from there? And it's easy to turn into these things to fill that gap, right? To turn to consumerism, to turn to like endless scrolling stuff to distract us from actually facing that existential void.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the last one is last man syndrome.
Yeah.
In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he describes the last man, a future human who avoids all risk, all greatness, preferring safety, pleasure, and mediocrity. Nietzsche might
Yep.
see a lot of today's society with its focus on comfort, security, and conformity as becoming the last man, a kind of spiritual stagnation.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, the last man
Dude,
is
I
like,
there are so many of them that work at the co-working space I work at who just work for some of the companies there, and they're just like literally all they do is just complain about their life and they just keep on doing it day in day in day
yeah.
out.
Oh man. Like the last man is like terrifying when you read it in the thing and it is very prophetic of where we are now. And it's kind of sad too. But I think he also, on a side note, I think he also did sort of see this as, you know, he realized humanity was, it's like a progression too, right? So we might come out of this better. We might come out of this worse. But that's where that work comes in. And I think thinking about these things is still important, right?
Mm.
The only way to make this a better society eventually is to like, reflect on it, read these things, and hopefully, change some of what we're doing. Yeah.
Hmm. Not just wear red hats, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So any last thoughts before you close this one out, Danny?
Uh, yeah, it's funny. I will say that with it on the politics thing. I was
Hmm.
watching, like John Oliver and like Daily Show. Like I used to really like those shows because they're very funny and they would, just make fun of the stupid things with the news, right? But it's gotten to the point now where like they just report the actual news because it's gotten so absurd that like, and I think that's like a
Dude,
indication of
and
how
news
ridiculous
is
things
just
are.
reporting. Well, yeah, news has gone from reporting things of substance to just reporting the most popular things on social media.
That's all. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
without even no fact checking, nothing. It's like whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which is rather unfortunate because like attention goes to just outrageous things, not exactly the things of most substance or
No, well, plus if you have a 24/7 cycle and you keep repeating the same thing, people eventually believe it. It's like you hear it enough. It's like that. I forget
oh
there's
yeah,
like
that
some
was
theory on
that
that,
was
right?
Himmler. That
Oh,
was
was
that was
that?
like the or no, that was Goebbels, Hitler's
Yeah.
minister of propaganda. He was
Yeah.
like, if you lie to people often enough, eventually they'll believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Well,
you
there we
forget.
go. The modern news inspired by Goebbels.
Yeah, right. Oh God. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nietzsche would have been appalled. Well, there you have it then, right? What would Nietzsche think of the world today? A little look at what he would have thought of it. Encourage you to go actually read his books. I think you'd find a lot of interesting stuff. He is very prophetic, and there's a lot there that's good for understanding the world we live in today. If you enjoyed this episode, check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. If you have ideas for episodes, reach out to us. You can comment on one of the YouTube videos, or you can email us, or your emails in the show notes. But we'll be back later this week with another episode. Until then, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.